The moment I saw my own garage door hanging wide open with a plastic folding table halfway sticking out and a crooked banner above it that read, HOA Quarterly Wine and Strategy Summit, I had two immediate thoughts. First, I never gave anyone permission to enter my garage. Second, the universe had just handed me the dumbest criminals I would ever investigate. They had broken into the private property of a state tax examiner and were currently sipping Chardonnay not 10 feet from several boxes of unfiled receipts, some deeply questionable invoices, and a massage chair marked as office equipment that I hadn't even had time to unpack. The best part? They had no idea who I was. They thought I was just the new guy, some quiet, docile face with a polite smile and a soft handshake. They were about to find out that I investigated fraud for a living and had a zero-tolerance policy for theft, especially when it was hiding in plain sight inside my own garage. It had only been 4 days since I moved into Oak Hill Estetisa picture-perfect community where the sidewalks were pristine, the lawns were suspiciously uniform, and the residents smiled a little too hard when they asked how your day was going. I had just taken a new position with the State Department of Revenue as a senior examiner and thought, for once, I might finally settle into a real home. A quiet place. Maybe make a few friends. Host a barbecue or two. I kept my job description vague when introducing myself. State administration, I said to the first few overly curious neighbors who greeted me with rigid welcome baskets and glossy pamphlets full of HOA guidelines printed in alarming font sizes. The first to truly introduce herself was Monica Vale, who treated the moment less like a greeting and more like a compliance inspection. She wore massive sunglasses and clutched a clipboard like it was a scepter of suburban justice. We run a tight ship here, she informed me, motioning vaguely at the manicured cul-de-sac like she'd personally invented it. I nodded politely and gave her nothing. I've been trained to observe more than I reveal. That's part of the job. But in less than 5 minutes, she gave me everything I needed: her tone, her sense of control, and, most importantly, her habit of assuming that no one would ever call her out. The first real warning sign came when I noticed a different padlock installed on my garage. I had just finished setting up my own lock system the night before. This one wasn't mine. I tried the code. Nothing. I tried the backup key. Didn't fit. Confused, I walked around to the side door and peeked in through the window. That's when I saw it. Long folding tables covered in printed documents. HOA letterheads scattered like confetti. Boxes of wine. A filing cabinet in the corner. Someone had transformed my garage into a makeshift HOA operations center. Monica appeared behind me like a jump scare from a PG-rated thriller. "Oh, I meant to leave a note," she said casually, not even attempting to act surprised. "The previous owner was kind enough to let us use this space for storage. It's sort of a tradition." She smiled like she expected me to thank her for trespassing. I told her plainly that I hadn't agreed to anything. Her smile tightened. "Well," she said coolly, "we assumed you'd be a team player. I've seen manipulation, gaslighting, and deflection in every form you can imagine. But there's something uniquely infuriating about someone who breaks into your home and then acts like you're the one being unreasonable." I didn't argue. I just nodded and said I'd look into it, which in my line of work translates to, "I'm about to end your entire financial career." That night, while reviewing work emails, a new assignment popped up in my inbox. I nearly choked on my coffee. Oak Hill Estates HOA audit assignment confirmed. The state had randomly assigned me to review the exact HOA that had broken into my garage and was now storing what looked like years of potentially fraudulent documentation inside it. I hadn't believed in fate until that moment. The next morning, I began collecting what I could. I photographed the inside of the garage from the side window, noted serial numbers on office equipment, cataloged anything legible without crossing the threshold. I didn't want to spook them. Yet, that afternoon, Monica sent me a text without permission, naturally inviting me to the Oak Hill Summer Sips event being hosted on my front lawn. Apparently, she had volunteered my property for the HOA's welcome party. "Great way to meet your neighbors," she wrote, followed by a barrage of clapping hand emojis. I replied with a thumbs up and marked my calendar. Let them keep building their own gallows. The following morning, I sipped my coffee while HOA volunteers decorated my bushes with fake sunflowers and plugged wine chillers into my outdoor outlets. I felt equal parts amusement and grim satisfaction. I'd seen this sort of arrogance before, people who treated public money like their personal piggy bank, but never this boldly. Inside the garage, amidst the bottles of Merlot and a punch bowl labeled "For board members only," I could already identify fake landscaping invoices, personal reimbursements, and receipts that looked like they were printed with crayon. Monica clinked glasses with her board members, wearing a sash that said, "President for Life," like she was throwing a gala for herself. She waved across the lawn. "So glad you came." I waved back. Then I pulled out my phone and began drafting my preliminary audit report. By the time they finished their wine-soaked schmoozing and stumbled off into the night, I had everything I needed. I waited until the last balloon deflated. Then I locked my front door, opened my laptop, and began slicing through their financials like a surgeon sharpening scalpels. This was no longer a petty invasion of privacy. This was war. The audit process normally takes weeks to initiate. But since I had first-hand evidence of misconduct and had already been officially assigned the case, I flagged it as high priority. Within hours, I pulled every public filing, scanned expense reports, and found enough suspicious activity to light up a Christmas tree. There were community improvement charges that covered catered lunches and seasonal decor purchases totaling over $4,000, which apparently bought 3 inflatable snowmen and a karaoke machine. It wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping. It was brazen, as if they truly believed no one would ever look. 3 days after the party, I sent the audit notice to the HOA's registered address and followed it with a courtesy call. Monica answered. I gave her my full name, department, badge number, and the purpose of the call. The silence was beautiful. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice brittle. "There must be some mistake. Why would the state audit our little HOA?" "Random selection," I replied. "And a recent complaint about misuse of private property. Standard procedure." She recovered quickly. "I'll give her that. Well, we're extremely organized. Very transparent. I'm sure this won't take long." "I agree," I said. That afternoon, an emergency HOA board meeting was announced. Flyers were shoved into mailboxes. A group chat I never asked to join lit up with frantic messages. "Stay calm. Present a united front. Clean up the files." I watched from my porch as Monica and 2 board members wheeled crates out of my garage, whispering like cartoon villains. They didn't know I'd already scanned everything. It was like watching raccoons rearrange garbage to cover up a robbery. 2 days later, I made my first official visit to the HOA's office, which was really a supply closet behind the community center. Monica greeted me in pearls and an iron skirt, trying to summon whatever remnants of authority she thought she had. "Everything's right here," she said, gesturing toward 3-ring binders stacked on a plastic table. "Every receipt, every meeting minute." I nodded and began scanning. Dozens of physical entries didn't match their digital records. One folder labeled Maintenance Q3 was full of sushi menus. When I pointed it out, she laughed a little too hard. "Oh, someone must have misfiled that. We had a team lunch. We talked about sprinklers. All $684 of it?" I asked. She blinked. I kept going. By the end of the session, I had flagged so many discrepancies that I escalated the audit to full financial misconduct. But Monica still didn't get it. She kept trying to charm her way through it, offering cupcakes, joking about bureaucrats, and asking if I understood how hard it was to keep picky neighbors happy. "I imagine it's easier when you're not committing tax fraud," I said. That evening, I walked the neighborhood. Families watered their lawns. Joggers waved. Kids rode bikes. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, an envelope appeared under my door. No name. Just a stack of photocopied receipts and a handwritten note. "Check the landscaping contracts." Fake names. No work done. The handwriting belonged to Mrs. Denton, the elderly widow 2 doors down, who once told me Monica ran this place like a cult. She wasn't wrong. I ran the contractor names. One was registered to a vacant lot. Another to a shell company listed under Monica's husband's name. I froze the HOA's operating account immediately and filed a formal notice. An hour later, Monica came storming up my driveway with a stack of papers and fury in her eyes. "You have no right. This is harassment. You used my garage without permission," I said. "You filed fake expenses. This isn't harassment. It's accountability." She sputtered, slammed the papers on my porch, stormed off. She didn't appear in public for the next 2 days. In her absence, the cracks began to show. Park lights stayed off. Trash piled up. Landscaping crews vanished. The illusion of control had broken. Behind the scenes, I kept digging. I contacted former board members and vendors. One man allegedly paid $12,000 for driveway ceiling laughed when I showed him the invoice. I haven't worked in that county in a decade. He provided a signed statement. That was the final nail. I submitted everything to the State Oversight Committee and recommended a forensic audit. It was approved the same day. The next week, a sheriff's deputy served Monica on her front porch. Several neighbors watched from behind curtains. She didn't slam the door this time. She just stood there, defeated. A week later, the community held its first real town hall meeting in years. No wine, no sash, no script, just folding chairs and honest questions. They voted to dissolve the existing HOA board. Mrs. Denton was elected interim president. She brought brownies. The next morning, Monica was packing boxes. I stood on my porch with coffee in hand. "You could have just knocked and asked," I said. She didn't reply, just slammed her trunk and drove away. The garage was mine again. I installed a biometric lock and converted it into a secure workspace and home gym, but I kept one Tina cheap folding chair, initials MV scribbled underneath. I placed it in the corner. A trophy, a reminder. Weeks passed. Oak Hill healed. Gardens flourished. Wind chimes sang. People smiled like they meant it. And I poured a glass of wine, lifted it to the ceiling, and whispered the truth I'd always known. If you break into my garage, you better be ready for what comes next. And Monica? She wasn't.